You've been listening to The Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov, in a translation by Diana Bergen and Catherine Tiernan O'Connor, narrated by George Guidell, and directed by Greta Byram. We conclude this book with the biographical note on author Mikhail Bulgakov. Mikhail Afanasyevich Bulgakov was born in Kiev in 1891, the son of a Russian lecturer in theology and the grandson of priests on both sides. Medicine, religion, and education were the dominant careers in his family. Despite an early interest in literature and the theatre, Bulgakov chose to become a doctor. In 1914, as a medical student, he volunteered with the Red Cross during World War I. After graduating from the University of Kiev in 1916, he served in the White Army during the Civil War, and was briefly forcibly mobilized by the Ukrainian Nationalist Army. These experiences during the chaos of the Civil War in Kiev and the Caucasus had a profound effect on the writer and his work. His two younger brothers disappeared during the fighting around Kiev and later surfaced in Europe. In 1919, while in the Caucasus, he made the decision to leave medicine for literature. Soon after, he almost emigrated, but was prevented from doing so by illness, which he took as a sign. By 1921, he was in Moscow, where his literary career began in earnest. The Diaboliad collection, published in 1925, was his major publication of this time, since his masterpiece Heart of a Dog could not get past the censorship. This same period saw the partial publication of his novel about Kiev during the Civil War, White Guard. Publications ceased when the journal serializing the novel was shut down. However, enough had come out to arouse the interest of the Moscow Art Theatre, which commissioned a play based on White Guard. This play, The Days of the Turbans, was the source of Bulgakov's fame for the rest of his life, and was a major sensation both due to its vivid characterizations and its portrayal of a monarchist family in a sympathetic light rather than as monsters, which was the norm at this time. When he had a number of other plays in production, Zoya's Apartment, Flight, and The Crimson Island, Bulgakov had drawn down the wrath of the leftist critics, who felt that everything he wrote was essentially anti-Soviet. This was a period of extreme polarization, and Bulgakov's career was destroyed by 1929. He would have one more original play, Molière, staged in his lifetime. It was quickly withdrawn from production due to the critics. But all publication of his prose ceased after 1927. In 1930, in a time of despair when he burned his works in manuscript, he wrote his famous letter to the Soviet government defending his right to be a satirist and asking that his country let him emigrate if it could not use his abilities. To everyone's astonishment, Stalin, who had seen The Days of the Turbans many times, answered this letter with a phone call, and soon afterward Bulgakov had employment with a small theatre. The Moscow Art Theatre then found work for him, but most of the projects he worked on came to nothing, and the last 8 years of his life were full of stress and disappointment. He broke with Stanislavski and the Art Theatre after the Molière debacle and returned to theatrical novel, begun earlier, then resumed, as a way of venting his spleen. He went to work for the Bolshoi Theatre as a librettist, which also proved frustrating, as project after project remained unproduced. From 1928 on, Bulgakov had worked only sporadically on his major work, The Master and Margarita. In 1937, He dropped theatrical novel, which would remain unfinished, and concentrated on the novel about the devil in Moscow. In 1938, under pressure from the Art Theatre, he wrote a play about the young Stalin, Batum, which was not only a compromise on his part, but adversely affected his failing health when it was rejected. When he died of nephrosclerosis, which had killed his father at the same age, in 1940, he had finished the writing of The Master and Margarita, although not the final editing, which he worked on up to months before his death. This novel, which is now considered one of the best Russian novels of the 20th century, was not published until 1966 to 1967, and then in censored form in a Moscow journal, 26 years after Bulgakov's death. Heart of a Dog, however, was not published until 1987, the height of glasnost, more than 60 years after it was written, a true indication of just how threatening satire could be to a totalitarian regime. Bulgakov is now one of his country's most popular writers. And that was a biographical note about author Mikhail Bulgakov.